Hello and welcome to One Piece of Insight. In today's video, we'll be continuing our series where we look at the rarity of every single card from every single set. Today we'll be looking at OP06 through OP08 and EB01. So for those who've been asking in the comments for me to talk about treasure rares, today is your day. It's finally happening. But before we get into the regularly scheduled content, I wanted to comment on some news that came out yesterday, which is that Bandai has announced officially that they are going to be reprinting OP13 and EB03, with this being the first time that they've reprinted an extra booster set. I don't want to spend too much time on this and derail the video, but I wanted to give a couple quick thoughts. The first is, this is a good thing. This is not a bad thing. This is not going to crater the market. This is going to help the market to remain healthy long term. When people can't buy product, they will leave and go do something else. And so the growth that the game and the collecting has experienced over the last few months is at risk if Bandai cannot provide product at a reasonable price. So while I do think this will mean a short-term drop in some products, and I do think some people will overreact and extend it to other products that are likely not to be reprinted, long-term, this is a good thing, and long-term, I don't think this is going to have a significant impact on the prices. I'll give more logic in a future video, but for right now, that's where I wanted to leave it. So if you watched my last video where I gave the EB03 pre-orders 3 stars at $450, I do want to downgrade that. I think given the reprints are going to be coming, I think $250 to $300 a box is a much better target than where we are at $450, so I would give that now 2 stars. So with that, let's return to our regularly scheduled content. Okay, starting off the conversation as we always do, how did we calculate rarity? We look at the number of each card type in a set, pull rates from each card type in a case, an average number of each card pulled in a case, and then the expected number of pulls per 1,000 cases. All right, so looking first at OP06 to OP08 pull rates. These are relatively standard sets compared to what we saw in OP05 minus the special cards, right? So we had 6 leaders, 16 alts, 2 secrets, 2 secret alts, 1 manga, 6 SPs. The only difference here is 1 treasure rare. And the pull rates for everything were the same as OP05, except obviously they did not have treasure rares. So if we look at the number of pulls per case, the 2 things that I want to focus on here are, number 1, SPs again, as in OP05, are the same pull rates as manga. Now let me be clear about this because there is some confusion in the comments. I am not saying that you are as likely to pull a random SP as you are to pull a manga. There are 6 SPs, and if you opened 3 cases, on average you would open 1 of every SP, in the same way that on average you would open 1 manga. So SPs are 6 times more common than mangas, but getting a specific SP is just as unlikely as pulling a manga. And so for that reason, if you're looking to buy a specific SP, I think that is a relatively comparable pull rate, even though SPs themselves are significantly less rare than mangas. The other thing I really wanted to point out here is that treasure rares are appearing at the exact same rarity as regular alt arts. Now, I want to go through how I estimated this. So I looked at 16 cases that had potential to pull treasure rares, and in 14 of those cases, a treasure rare came out. So that's 87.5%. Treasure rares also replace the alt art slot, so whenever a treasure rare was pulled, that was 1 fewer alt art. So while I don't know for sure the treasure rares are just considered a regular alt art in these sets, given how close 87.5% is to the expected pull rate for a regular alt art, which is 91%, I feel reasonably confident that treasure rares are just regular alt arts for the purposes of pull rates. That the distinction between treasure rares and regular alt arts is that the treasure rares are actually reprints of previous cards, whereas alt arts have to be either a rare or a super rare within the set. So I think there are a lot of implications for that we will cover a little bit later in the video. All right, but first I want to look at EB01 pull rates. EB01 is an entirely different animal from all of the other sets that have come before it. There are only 3 leaders, there are only 14 alts, there's only 1 secret alt, and 1 manga. Now interestingly, the pull rates remain the same, even though the numbers in the set are actually pretty different, and so that leads to some wildly different rarities among individual cards. So leaders in EB01, for example, you expect to get 1 1/3 out of every case, as opposed to in most sets where you're only getting about a half of a leader in a given case. And so if you look at the number of pulls per 1,000 cases for EB01, these are going to be significantly higher than any other set that we've looked at. So the manga remains exactly the same. There's still one manga. It still has approximately the same pull rate. Number 2, we have the Alt Art Secret, in this case the Mr. Number 2 that's really popular. This has a higher pull rate than a typical Alt Art, and much, much higher than the typical 600 per 1,000 cases that you would get from an Alt Art Secret in most sets. Again, Alt Arts here, same higher pull rates than traditional Alt Arts. Alt Art Leaders, the pull rates here are like double what they are in most sets because there are only half as many leaders in this set. And then secret rares are double a normal set because you get 8 of the same secret rare as opposed to 4 each of 2 different secret rares. So if we compare these sets to the sets that we've previously looked at in these series, we see that OP05 still remains the most rare in terms of the manga at 110 per 1,000 cases and the Oda Sig at 167 per 1,000 cases. The 06-08 mangas and the EB01 mangas are exactly the same as the previous normal manga pull rates. And again, in 6-08, the SPs are the same pull rates as OP05, leading them to have the same rarity as the mangas on an individual card basis. The big places where we see differences here are when we get to the right side of the chart, where we have treasure rares at exactly the same rate as alt arts, and then we have basically every card in EB01 being less rare than normal cards in other sets. So what are our primary takeaways from this analysis? Well, the most important message I want to leave you with is that treasure rares are overrated. I have consumed a lot of content on YouTube, on Reddit, on other places where people have talked about how incredibly rare treasure rares are because they are less than 1 per case. The truth is, I think that what people are missing when they give that analysis is that any individual alt art is less than 1 case per average. And so the treasure rares, even though they may feel rare because we are signaled to look at them and treat them differently from other alt arts, they are actually the same exact level of rarity as a traditional alt art. And so for that reason, they should not, in my opinion, have any superior premium on them compared to regular alt arts. Now, I do want to caveat here, based on some really helpful feedback I've gotten in the comments, I am talking specifically about English treasure rares. I don't have any information about French treasure rares or Chinese treasure rares. I suspect the pull rates for those are the same, although I don't have any evidence for that, except for the fact that Bandai has been traditionally very consistent in its pull rates across products. But I don't have any idea of what the print run are for those. So those are likely to be far more scarce than the English ones, just based on the fact that the English ones have a much larger print run, but I really don't know. And so for this analysis, I'm really just talking about the English ones. So when I say that I think these are overrated, I want to give you some specific examples of what I mean. So first, if we look at the Nami Treasure Rare from OP06, this is currently going for $300 raw. And then we have the Nami Alt Art, also from OP06, that's currently going for $29 raw. That is a 10 times premium for the Nami Treasure Rare over the Nami Alt Art. Now, if you prefer the Nami Treasure Rare, that's totally fine. I do not. I think I've heard a lot of people that don't because, frankly, it doesn't look very much like Nami at all. I do think the background is really cool. I think it's an interesting looking card, but a 10 times premium for a card that is the same rarity from the same set that a lot of people really don't like strikes me as kind of baffling and is driven primarily by misinformation. I will be honest, as soon as I did this analysis, I sold my Nami Treasure Rare. If you love the Nami Treasure Rare, if you think it's fantastic, that's totally fine. I'm not telling people they have to sell things that they love. I'm just saying that based on the rarity, I don't see the argument for why the Nami Treasure Rare would be 10 times the price of the Nami Alt Art from the same exact set. Now moving on to another less egregious example, but still fairly egregious in my view, we have the Luffy Treasure Rare from OP08, the Egghead Luffy, compared to the Egghead Luffy Alt Art in OP07. Now these are from different sets, but I chose them because they have very similar artwork. And so the Luffy Treasure Rare here we have going for $180, and the alt art we have going for $54, which is 3.3 times the price. Now, I would actually argue that the alt art is the superior art here for a couple reasons. Number one, it's Oda original art. If you notice, it doesn't have an artist identified on the right side of the card. That's how you indicate that it's Oda original art. So to me, that should command a premium. It's also the box art from OP07, 500 Years in the Future, which I think should command a premium because it is sort of a more iconic piece of art. And yet, we have the Luffy Treasure Rare being worth 3 1/3 times as much as the alt art. So again, I'm not telling people how to collect. I'm not telling people what to love. If you love the treasure rare, you think it's better, great, buy it. But I think it is overpriced for its rarity compared to what you can get elsewhere. Assuming 07 and 08 had similar print runs, these two cards should have the same population, and yet the treasure rare is going for over 3 times as much as the regular alt art. And then moving on to our final and what I view as sort of the least egregious example of this is the Law Treasure Rare. I consider this to be the least egregious because this one is just the lowest amount of markup, but I still think the same logic applies here. You know, on the left, you have the Law Treasure Rare selling for $85. On the right, you have the Law Alt Art from OP05 selling for only $30. I, again, think the alt art on the right is actually a better card than the one on the left. Number one, it's from OP05, which is a more prestigious set. Number two, it's Akira Agawa, who everybody loves, and I think that's going to lead to more of a premium for her artwork over other things. The one on the left is from OP07, therefore may have a slightly lower print run than OP05, so I could see an argument for that one on those grounds. But for the most part, I think people are paying a premium for treasure rares because they think they are rarer than regular alt arts, and I'm here to tell you that based on the analysis I've done, I don't think that they are. So that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the number of people who've been tuning in. We've been growing incredibly fast. We just crossed 450 subscribers, so thank you so much for the wonderful comments. Please keep them coming. I'm glad people are enjoying the content. If you're looking for the results of the giveaway that we're doing, that's going to be in the next video, so stay tuned for that. So once again, thank you so much for your time, and I will see you in the next one.